Hey guys, I'm just gonna do a bit of talking as usual about this Glock that I picked up recently, and then just sort of an update on I guess my thoughts, on well, some of my sort of philosophical thoughts and sort of logical, calculative thoughts on handguns and why that led me to decide to sort of make the decisions that I've made in regards to this particular gun. So yeah, I'll just get right into it. This is a Gen 3 Glock 27. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just the third generation 40 cal baby Glock. And as far as modifications, I don't really plan to do anything to this other than perhaps a new recoil spring. I have one ordered, but it hasn't shown up yet, which is actually a little bit surprising, from Wolf. And new sights, which I ordered directly from the Glock, like factory outlet store type thing. I went with just their steel version of these. I really like this sight picture. I don't know why. On the previous Glock 23 Gen 4 that I owned like a couple of years ago, I sort of immediately wanted to change out the sights, and I never really got used to this picture, or why. I never really took the time to sort of think about it and appreciate what this has to offer. I just sort of was kind of on the bandwagon with, like, the first thing you always do with a Glock is put new sights on it and stuff. So I almost immediately changed them. But with this, in comparison to some of the other 3-dot and bar dot sight setups that I've been using lately, what I found with this is that I actually really like this. I'm still not 100% sure that I need night sights on my defensive handguns, and they certainly have their downsides. One being the cost. You're talking like $100 or more in a lot of cases. They have a limited lifespan in the sense that, like, the tritium is going to be next to useless after something like 8 to 12 years. So right around a decade, you'll have to buy new ones. And I also find that just plain white painted sights like this, well, these aren't paint, I don't think, but I think it's literally like white plastic inserts. But anyway, just plain white sights like this, I find that the aiming point is a lot clearer because you don't have that sort of hole in the middle with like a little glass thing. It's a cleaner, clearer sight picture in that sense. And also, white, you might say, as far as sights go, I'm a white supremacist. The white coloration really is, to me, to my eyes, is far and away the most consistently visible color on a sight in any lighting conditions. I've tried like fluorescent yellow and chartreuse, you might call it, and the sort of like blaze orange type stuff, and fiber optics and all this and that. But honestly, as far as just consistency and appearing the same way and having the same good visibility across any sort of background or any lighting condition, I really think that plain white markings are about as good as it gets, really. I just don't, they look the same every time. And then as far as this Glock sight picture, I like it for a few different reasons. One, it's very obvious, I'm sure you can tell, it's very obvious where the front sight is in relation to the rear sight because they don't look anything like each other in terms of the markings. Whereas what I find with 3-dot sight setups and bar dot sight setups is that because the front and rear, at least on some level, are essentially the same markings, Yeah, I kind of have to. It takes more effort to really make sure that I know what I'm looking at, and then to kind of mentally separate out the front from the rear, and sort of line things up properly. Whereas with this, there's no guesswork involved at all. It's just you just drop the front down into that rear notch and pull the trigger, and you're good to go. And it's very obvious when it's too low or too high because it's either not in the box, or it's partially obscured by or outright below the box. And same with left and right. It gets blocked out on either side. It's just, so you just center it in the box, and at least with this gun and two different ammo types that I've tried, the dot itself is your point of impact at about 5 to 10 yards at the closer distances. I still haven't shot this on paper out at like 25 yards or anything just to check. But in close, the dot is my point of aim. So you just center the dot in here, and wherever that is more or less where the bullet's going to hit. I like it. It's very easy to use. It's very intuitive. It's clear. It's clear and precise as I need for defensive type shooting. So I saw no reason to get really expensive night sights that are usually going to be in a 3-dot or 2-dot configuration that I don't like. So I decided to spend $30 instead of like $130. And then essentially, unless, something like they get super rusty or something like that, I shouldn't have to replace them ever again. The steel version of these sights, I mean. So that's the direction I went on there. And that's another delay. I ordered them last Friday from the Glock website, and I didn't get an email until I think Thursday of this week with a tracking number saying that they would be at my house on Tuesday, which is 2 days from now, Sunday. So I don't know. I mean, the shipping is obviously very delayed and sort of slow. But shit, I mean, for $30, and I have all the tools necessary to do a sight install on a Glock because of that one that I owned previously. It's not. For $30 to get a very functional, durable, and sort of infinitely long-lasting set of sights, I don't think to me it's the way to go. Unless you just happen to hate this sight picture, you know what I mean? Like if somebody did, that's fine. But I like it, so I saw no reason to change it really, other than to just get the steel versions. So yeah, there's that. And then same thing with the trigger and the barrel as far as modifying things. A lot of people will put aftermarket barrels and aftermarket triggers, and I've done all that stuff in the past. But in this case, I don't really see a need. When I changed out the barrel last time, the chamber was quite a bit tighter, and that was really about it. So the chamber was quite a bit tighter, and the lockup, I guess, around the hood was a little bit tighter. So essentially what that did was the tighter chamber basically gives you slightly better accuracy and slightly better extreme spreads and standard deviations when you're doing velocity checks. And it would go, if I remember correct, my numbers could be slightly off here because it's actually been a while since I sort of reread the information that I posted. It was a couple of years ago. But if I remember correctly, it would be like an extreme spread of, say, 45 for the stock Glock barrel, 45, 50 feet per second. And then with the aftermarket Alpha Wolf barrel with the much tighter chamber, it was 25 or so. So it was better. So not only is it keeping your velocities more consistent, it's also a tighter chamber that ensures that the cartridge itself is going to be at least more or less in the same, I guess it'll be more consistently placed in relation to the bore. So it should give you a little bit better accuracy on paper and a little bit better consistency with your velocities. But in this case, I just don't think it's worth the additional $150, at least to get one in 40 cal. I would like to maybe get one in 357 SIG, and then I'd possibly a conversion barrel to 9mm also, just so that I can shoot 9mm if I want to. If anything, just for versatility's sake, not because I would shoot it on a regular basis, but just to have. But so in this case, I see no reason to get any sort of aftermarket 40 cal barrel. And then the same with the trigger. I had an 8-pound Glock connector, an OEM Glock connector. This is the one that's marked plus on it. They have the sort of, as far as I understand and from what I've seen, the regular factory one doesn't really have any markings. Their factory version of the 3.5 has a minus marking. There's one that has a dot on it that's supposedly just slightly lighter than the regular one, and then they have the plus marked one. Now this does increase the weight of the trigger pull. It's pretty noticeable, but it's not like it makes it this heavy, terrible trigger. What I actually really like about it is that the stock trigger is not bad, but it's the wall. It's a little bit more of a rolling break than I'd like. It's the stock one was sort of like you hit the wall, and then it's sort of this mush, this like roll through, and then it breaks. The 8-pound one, however, the wall is much sort of harder. It's not like on the factory one or the stock one where you pull and then as you hit the wall, it sort of moves through and then breaks. This one's much more sort of clean and clear. You hit the wall, and even I'm probably putting enough pressure on this right now to set off the factory trigger. Certainly one of the 3.5-pound ones. I'm pushing quite hard on this. So you know, nice firm hard take up to the wall, and then the break is it's a much cleaner. It's just a much more crisp and clean trigger. So yes, the weight is increased, but the break itself, as you can see, it's not causing me to you know, drastically, you know, jerk the trigger around just because it's heavier. If anything, I might be able to shoot this a bit better than the factory one. And then reset is very, very fast and positive with this. Now, in the past, I never really shot to trigger reset. I don't know why, but in the case of this, like, I didn't even know it was a thing, really, until like a bunch of people on the internet mentioned it, and I was like, what the fuck is reset? I don't know what that is. But anyway, in this particular gun, I've actually been doing it, and I didn't really. I think it's because of a combination of my sort of like tendency to really squeeze hard on the gun when I'm holding it, as well as the additional pressure needed to set this trigger off. So what I found was that if I'm sort of doing proper follow through, I would hold the trigger back anyway, and then I just reset, you know, and then I just let it out till I hear and feel the click, and then pull it again. And I'm not doing like crazy machine gun type rapid fire when I'm doing that. All I'm doing is basically this. It's sort of like a rhythm. Like you just see fire, and then it's just sort of that nice. I'm not doing the, you know, jerking it around and shit. It's just a smooth, consistent release, pull, release, pull, release, pull. And when I'm shooting like that in that sort of rhythmic, like, you know, maybe 1 shot per second pace, I put my 8-inch plate, or I stepped off 10 yards for my 8-inch plate, and I can just hit that 8-inch circle at 10 yards at no problem at all. Boom, 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 boom. Like, just it's very easy to shoot this decently well. Now, so yeah, I don't see any reason to mess with the trigger or put a new trigger shoe or anything like that. I'm just going to leave it alone. So aside from the 8-pound connector and the aftermarket sights, and then likely a recoil spring, at least once it gets in, maybe I don't know, maybe I won't install it or won't keep it after I install it. I don't know, but I get the sense from the ejection pattern that this gun is pretty undersprung, especially for actual, real, full power 40 like this MagTech shit that's a 155 grainer at, you know, 1,200 plus feet per second. out of this gun, I haven't chronographed that yet out of this gun because it's been so damn overcast and rainy and windy, and it's kind of been crappy weather here lately. So I actually haven't checked the speed on these. Out of just throwing shit around. I haven't checked the speed on these out of this gun, but they were at 1170 out of my PM40, and they were at 1210 out of my what do you call it? USP compact. So I would imagine that in this, they're certainly not going any slower than 1170. I don't see how that would be likely. But they almost certainly aren't going any faster than 1210. So it's somewhere in there. Its performance should be roughly the same as either of those two guns. And I get, I don't know. The accuracy on these is just fine. I've tested them on milk jugs, and they absolutely blow up and shred the milk jug. I mean, it's not even close. Like if you look at the way that this one of these really just tears up plastic jugs full of water. It's much more than any of the other sort of random, more, like I tested some Winchester Defender 165 grain bonded stuff, and they're coming in at around 75 to 100 feet per second slower than these, but it's a slightly heavier bullet as well. It still worked, but as far as just my sort of subjective view of what happens when you shoot a water jug, these Magtechs do better than anything I've tried. The cap goes 30 feet in the air, and the jug gets peeled open in multiple spots. It's not like I've shot a bunch with other ammo where it basically, you have your entrance hole and then it'll kind of rip around the back, like it'll kind of tear it open on the exit side. But in the case of these Magtechs, it rips it open in multiple places and just tears it apart. You pick it up by a scrap and the whole thing is just loosely, flopping around. It really annihilates them. So I like this stuff. I can get this for about 52 or 54 cents a piece at a local store, and unfortunately this is a discontinued load, but I appear to be the only one buying it because they never have any less in stock than they did the last time I went in and bought some. So I don't know, apparently they can't sell it. I don't know if everybody else just doesn't know what they're missing, or if they hate Magtech or they hate 40 or something. I don't know, but this shit works. I've never had a malfunction with it in any of my guns. The velocities are consistent. It's nice and fast. It's not downloaded like Federal's pussy-ass 155s that do, the Federal shit in 155 is literally 100 feet per second slower than this out of the same guns, same length barrels. It's ridiculous, or more even. Some of them are 125 feet per second slower. It's fucking pathetic, and it's twice as expensive as this. So I think this is great ammo. It's economical, very high performance. It works perfectly fine in my gun. Hits to point of aim. It hits to where the dot is, like I said. So I'll probably keep using that stuff for a while, at least until the store runs out of it. Now those are some snap caps, by the way. Let me think. What else? Yeah, I got an extra magazine for it, and then that's about it. The holster here that I'm using is a Galco Stow and Go. I like it. It's not, obviously it's nothing fancy, right? But as I struggle to reholster it, I like it. It's very minimalistic, as you can tell. It doesn't add much thickness like some of my other. What do you call it? Like my High Noon holsters. It doesn't add much thickness, and it sticks really well because of the suede, similar to the rough out on the High Noon holsters. Now, in the past, I've used Stow and Go's just as sort of my go-to, inexpensive IWB holster to get something to carry it with right off the bat. And I've always been at least somewhat pleased, but in this case, it actually, this model, it's one of the nice things about having a Glock, this model is intentionally designed for that gun. Whereas all the other times that I've used stow and goes, they were, it's more of a generalized thing. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, my gun does fit in this particular one decently enough, so I'll use it. But this one, there's nothing really extra on here except for a bit of length down here. The muzzle, the muzzle is, there's an additional, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch of leather that they probably could have gotten rid of. But, I mean, as you can see here, it does kind of bend and help cover up the muzzle against your body. So it's not that big a deal. But other than that, it's fitted to this gun pretty much exactly. So I've been pretty happy with this because it's comfortable. It's very low sort of bulk. Like there's really not much extra going on. And at least in the case of this individual one, some of them I've had in the past have not been like this. There seems to be a bit of a wide variation in the quality of the suede that Galco uses, which is understandable. It's a natural material. There's going to be some variation. Some of them have been very loose grained, where it's really soft and floppy. It's really fuzzy and you can tell that it's just a looser, more open structure to the leather. This one, I don't know if I just lucked out or what. I actually ordered this online, so I didn't hand pick this in a store or anything. But the leather appears to be very hard and sort of dense in comparison to pretty much any of the other ones that I've used. I don't know if it's because it's old stock or if it's just, if I just lucked out or what, but I don't know. So I'm very happy with this individual one, and despite the fact that like I said, I basically got this as like a way to carry it before I can think about, getting like a more expensive holster for sort of longer term use. I think I'm actually just going to keep using this. I really don't mind it. The only thing I don't particularly like is that this clip is a bit bulkier than I'd like. It's kind of wide. It's plastic, so of some kind, so it's a little bit thicker and sort of bulkier than I might otherwise prefer, but it's not a bad design. You've got these two hooks that sink down into the leather, so it doesn't come off my belt at all. And when I'm wearing it in like sweatpants, it actually bites into the waistband of the sweatpants quite well, and it doesn't come off with the gun in that case either. So I mean, it works, and I just don't really see any need to spend additional money right now on a new, more expensive holster when this seems to get the job done just fine. So yeah, that would be about it. You can see if you look in here, if I can show it correctly anyway, that see where the controls are starting to mold to the gun, or to the holster. I mean, you can kind of see I guess it's a little difficult to see on camera, but even after only having this and carrying it for like a couple of weeks, it's really taking a very nice form to the gun. So I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so that's the holster. And the reason that I'm going to stick with this is because, I don't know, this gun as my carry gun is because I like 40 cal because I think it offers adequate penetration and expansion for defensive purposes against humans. And you can load this with either, heavier, heavier jacketed hollow points, or even just what do you call them, full metal jacket practice ammo, or some of the hard cast stuff, and carry the same gun out in the woods for defense against sort of larger predators, bears and that sort of thing. So if I were to take this out camping, I wouldn't have to, or if I were to go out camping or something, I wouldn't feel like I would have to pick a different gun. It's not like I have to, carry my .32 auto when I'm in the city, and then rig up my 4-inch 357 revolver for when I go out in the woods. I can kind of just have one gun that is my one and only carry gun, and it works for all sort of potential situations. Kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type of thing. If I plus one it, I have 10 rounds on board, which to me is plenty for civilian carry purposes, especially in a 40 caliber. I just don't. It's hard for me to really say anything bad about this gun. I compared it directly in size to my PM40 and to also a M&P compact when I was at the store. The old one, not the 4-inch newer 2.0 compact. I mean the like 3.5-inch barrel one, and it's smaller than most of the other compacts, and it's a little bit bigger than the PM40. But I don't know. I shoot the gun very well. The grip is awesome, and I'd much prefer this grip to the PM40 or my USP compact. Even though it's only a 2-finger grip, I find this to be, it points very naturally. It's very hand filling and secure. The finger grooves are nice and deep. This palm swell in the back here is great. I don't know. It just works for me. I don't think I'm gonna. And I've been trying a lot of different guns over the last few years. I've been trying a lot of different stuff, trying to find something that I can sort of stick with, and something that works for me both in a practical perspective, in the sense that can and will I actually be able to carry it, on a 95% consistency sort of basis, and does it work for me in terms of my ability to actually shoot it pretty well? And this really, it seems to be almost perfect for me. And it's funny because I've tried so much different crap, not that they were crap guns, but just so much different stuff. And then to just circle all the way back around to a plain Jane Gen 3 baby Glock, it's almost disappointing, because I would have hoped that it would be something a little more adventurous and sort of out of the norm. But I mean, if it works, it works. And to me, this accomplishes anything that I would need a defensive handgun for. And then I also recently picked up a Kel-Tec Sub 2040 for sort of outdoors defense and home defense, like longer ranges. The same potential targets, but longer ranges. More power and shit like that. And in the home, you either get more power, or outdoors, you get longer ranges. But yeah, I mean, with this and then the Kel-Tec filling in the sort of long range or more power, I don't see any reason to get a different handgun for defensive purposes. So I actually sold my other two, and I'm just going to work with this because I've tried so much different stuff, and I'd really like to just... This works so well for me that what I'm going to do is just stick with this. Simply only use and carry this as far as a handgun goes. I just... When I have a handgun on me, it's going to be this one. When I shoot a handgun, it's going to be this one. When I, just have fun at the range with a handgun, it's going to be this one. I'm just going to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until using and carrying this becomes a natural, intuitive thing that I don't have to think about. I can just draw, aim, fire, and it's. There has to be that level of consistency, in my opinion, at least for me. Otherwise, I'm simply not going to develop the level of proficiency that I need to have with something like this in order to sort of have confidence and comfort in the fact that I can actually use this well. So yeah, I mean, at the moment I can shoot it quite well. I'm not it's rare that I get a gun, a handgun, that I can shoot pretty well right out of the box. But in this case, it just works for me. So I'm gonna stick with this as like my one and only handgun. And yeah, that's I guess that's about it.